Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're going to start another landscape study. This one we're going to be studying, again, linear perspective, atmospheric perspective, especially atmospheric perspective. And we're going to be talking about edges, how to get depth within the painting. Again, like I like to show you, I'm going to slow down, do a full lesson on this just a little bit. We might have a few quick little things as I add some little details and stuff so the video doesn't get too long, but it ought to be a lot of fun. We're going to do a vertical one this time. This is 16 inches this way, 20 inches this way. This is a 1/4 inch wood panel that I like to paint on. I gave it one light coat of the canvas prep medium, and then I did my drawing onto it, and I kept it really kind of simple drawing. So hopefully you can figure it out. Now, you don't have to put the elk. I put a run of elk in here, and I may put bull elk back here. I'm not really sure yet, but I just might do that. But I drew in some elk. We have a larger ponderosa pine tree here. I want to go in depth into there's some techniques I use to paint really detailed ponderosa pines that I showed in a class, an online class called The Art of Seeing. And I want to revisit some of those techniques again with this one. So should be a lot of fun. Some mountains in the back, and we'll put some of that atmospheric perspective and stuff into that, okay? The palette I have out here, I just used this on that floral that's right back behind here. And that's on the other channel, the Paint It Simply channel. And I used a value painting. As a matter of fact, I left the value up here so we can use that as well. But it's a value painting, learning to use values to paint those white roses and stuff. So that's a really good one for you to learn how to, even if you don't paint roses, go over there and watch how I use that value to get roundness into a rose, because we use that in landscapes, those same basic core principles. Okay, so I'll put a listing of all the colors. I use, of course, the Heritage MultiMedia acrylics, and I'll put a link to all of the colors and stuff down and a listing of it in the video description. This is the extender medium and some of the open medium. This is, and I'm going to start out, I'm just going to use up, these have been out. These have been out all day on this palette because I painted another painting with them. And they just stay that way. I don't need to add water or anything like that to them. I don't add water to them. So it's been out all day like that. It's 96 degrees outside. Of course, it's 70 degrees here in the studio, but that's it. They will stay nice for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to use just a little bit of the. I want this to not be like. I want there a little bit of warmth to this one. So I'm just going to take some of this neutral, my big brush, and some water. So this dries really, really fast. And it will, because it's warm in here right now. But I want to just a thin wash over this of the neutral. This is called toning the board. A lot of people, tone their canvases and stuff. Sometimes you get a lot of artists. I've done landscapes with some of my favorite toning using the burnt sienna and Indian yellow. I love that one. This one, lately this year, this has been a warm neutral background. This is the warm neutral background and color. And I used to use it all the time on everything. And then I got away from it for a couple of years, and now I'm back to it again. I just love the harmony that it gives all my colors. Even though you cover most of it up, it starts to affect your painting and stuff. So I'm just going to give it a nice warm feeling there. We'll give that just a second. While that's getting dry, we'll take a look at the value of the sky. We're going to start with in the back, the sky here. So we'll take a bit of our the phthalo here. I'm going to add just a tiniest bit of red violet to it, and then quite a bit of white. We're going to go up to about a value 8 or 9 for most of this here. Let's go a little bit lighter because I'm going to add a little darkness to the top. Now, on the we'll see in the editing if we put a photo up there, you guys can see that. And but I have it on a big, huge monitor here. You've seen, some of you've seen it. I have it right up there, really big, that I can look at it, and I think that's going to be, so if you see me glancing up there like that, I'm comparing. And what is really, really cool is right below it is the monitor that shows what you guys are looking at here. So I can look at the two at the same distance there and see how close I am. It's kind of a nice thing about having your own studio, you know. Yeah. So let's take some of that, and you can see this dries up really fast here. It's warm in here. And so we'll take some of this, and if it mixes up with a little bit of the warm neutral, that's fine. I'm going to take some of this, and we're going to use this right over this sky. I'm going to let some of it. Now, we're going to talk, the first thing we're going to talk about is atmospheric perspective. And in atmospheric perspective, you know, we're going to use this kind of a bluish color here as the base. So it'll go even heavier up here, right? And we'll probably do this a couple times, put on. But I'm going to walk this down, almost down to these trees, actually. There's going to be a layer of trees here. So let's just walk it right on down to the trees here as well. This is a beautiful, I love how you get a little bit of that, that warm neutral coming through just a bit. It just keeps the, you know, there are times where I really like the sky to be crisp, like sometimes in seascapes and stuff, that real bright, and then that's when I paint on a white background. When I want to have this warmth, and I want this warmth, there is, you know, into the photo, it's this kind of morning sun or evening sun, depending on what you want to look at it. And, you know, so a certain amount of warmth in those situations comes to your colors. But we want to walk all the way down, almost down to the deer there, because that is going to give the atmospheric perspective that we're going to look for, you know, here within the painting. Now, we're going to do a little heavier, so I'm going to come back with a little more color, maybe change it just a bit more blue in it, blue, violet in it, so it's a little bit brighter here and a little bit darker in value. The sky, as we work the sky gets darker as it goes up from the horizon line. Or if you have mountains there and stuff, we call that the skyline. Okay, but the sky gets darker as it goes up. So I'm going to put a little more color up here into the top and just walk that across. Just poke up underneath my little clip there. And not heavy, but I want a little more color, and I'll walk that down just a bit here. Just, I wipe any excess off my brush, and then I just soften it here. You can see, even though this is acrylic, you have lots of time to work this. And then we'll let that atmosphere. Now, some of this is the good color here that you just, and you can use this as a sample. So take this and push it up here by the side. You can let it dry, but that's the sample of the color, maybe just a little lighter, that we'll use later on in the painting to help us set even more atmosphere, okay? So I always like, when you're painting landscapes and stuff, I always like to tell people, save a little bit of your color, because that's going to help you, you know, later on in the painting and stuff. So I'll just rinse a little bit of that blue out of my brush here so I don't ruin. This is the Big Fusion 2-inch brush, which is nice. And I'm going to go to a 3/4 inch brush here, and I am going to push just a little more light. So we have the blue, which is going to mix into our colors. It's wet. And I'm down through here, I'm going to mix a little bit more light right along the skyline here. Just a little bit, just whisper that up. Those of you that, you know, have painted with me before, in the There is some clouds up there. Do you want to put clouds in there? You know, when I do clouds, I'm going to, you know, I like it to be the color to stay a little thicker, so I'll add some open medium to it. I don't want them to be too bright, so I'm going to take, this is medium white. This is a value 7 white. I'll mix it with just a little bit of blue here with this and this, so we get a color that's just a little lighter, but I'm going to use some open medium. This keeps this thicker. So the color that's on my sky is thinner. The cloud color is a little bit thicker here. And I'll put this on my knife, and this will give you nice clouds. So you can just push this across like this, see, and you'll get those wispy clouds very easy that we, you know, like to see in a painting. And most of it, guys, is just consistency of the paint. So if I want like super wispy clouds, let's say I want to build this one up a little bit, a little more thicker white, and I can build some heavier. I like to have a little bit of the undulation of the colors here, so sometimes I'll tap a bit, right like that. Now, I can take my big brush here. Let's make sure we pinch wipe all that water out of that, right? And we can just pull across and soften that into the sky here, just like that. And we'll leave some of that, but we can pull up if we want to give it a little more wispy movements and stuff to it. But just like that, it's just a quick little wispy cloud. Maybe, and you can continue to add more if you want. Let's add just, because it'll come back behind that, that ponderosa there. Let's just add a little bit right there. That looks good. Maybe down lower in the horizon line here, we'll add just a little bit of wispy clouds there. But you can build them up even heavier, but see how you get all of that high and low, and just real simplistic, like cirrus clouds, really simplistic, just by the thickness of your color, okay? And open medium slows down the drying time, and when mixed with that, it just makes it magic that happens with the palette knife. Now, you can pull down and create wind-blown clouds like I've showed you before in other lessons, but that works pretty well, so I think I'll just go with that. Let's take some blue, some burnt sienna, a little bit of the violet here, a little more violet, some of this violet here. Let's brown that up with just a bit of the medium bay, the warm neutral. I'm going to add some open medium maybe and a little extender, thin kind of colors. Now, value-wise, you know, the mountains, I'm going to start these out value-wise here, just a bit softer, and then we'll add more stuff to it here in just a minute. I think I'm going to add this photo. It'll probably be covered up with your stuff, but you can see it. This just for my reference there, so I can see the outline of the mountains and stuff, because kind of covered some of it up. But we'll take some of this with some extender here for just a minute here, and we'll kind of put in, and I'm going to paint, you know, the snow and stuff in here as well, but I kind of want to get the edges and what some of these colors here on this mountain here, and we'll carry it through the tree a bit just in case here. So we'll, even though this is going to be covered up by the tree, we'll carry it through. So this is just a color, so you come closer to the sky color. Now, you know, in a photo or something like that of it, and you can see in the photo of it, it looks quite a bit darker and stuff up here, and you know, more purple mountains majesty, right, is what I always say. And so, and you can do that. I start out more like this, and then I'll add more details as I get into the painting here. So I like some of this, you know, brush marks like this, they add a lot. Now, the light is going to be coming from the right, and so we have to justify that. Always remember where your light source is coming from, because that's going to be very important. So highlights will be coming basically onto the right side, shadows basically onto the left side. So we can add a little bit darker value here, a little more purple, a little bit more of the blue and violet, and a little bit darker here. And we can tap some of this in for the shadow sides of the mountains here. We're going to add snow and other things. But and I like to use like the 3/4 inch brush. I love to use these kinds of things flat like this. So I get all of this brush marks, undulations into it. That's what we're going to be adding into there. And we'll soften these out and stuff, but we're just looking right now for streaks and marks and undulations and stuff. Don't get big long ones. Keep everything kind of small, but little tapping motions here. Step back on your brush handle so you keep everything light. You imagine like that's going to be a shadow side of something there, and then there's the light side of it. Maybe there's another shadow side right in there. Shadow and light, right? The light, the light that we have here is more of a light blue, maybe even a little brighter of a blue. And you know, when you paint other landscapes with me in mountains, and we do specific mountains, light snow is basically an orange, and the darker snow is basically the blues and violets. But we're going to do more atmosphere here to set some of this. So we will set, I'm going to start out kind of cool here with the light, and then I'll come back and add the light struck snow. Okay, so yeah, just like that, just little taps of it. So this is the light side, and you can add a touch of it there to the shadow side of stuff as well here. And we're going to add the warmth, the values of it here as well. Here. And so we get all this little snow into the mountains and stuff. So the reference that I use here, this is a couple of different photos from Adobe Stock that I put together. And I got the original idea just searching for just herds of elk, but I wanted to do a vertical landscape, and because I do a lot of horizontal ones, and I wanted to do a vertical one. So now let's go back. So we have some of that light snow and stuff in there. We've got a lot more I'm going to do here, but let's get some warm. Now this medium white is a nice warm. Medium white's made with a little bit of burnt umber, a yellow oxide, and white. So it's a nice warm light color. We'll add a little bit of white to it, take it up a value to so here, and let's come in and we'll make the light struck areas here into some of this snow, and I'll push it around a bit there, and we'll deepen our shadows as well, so don't worry about that. We still got that to do, but we'll make some light struck areas. So I pick up even more paint, and I'll make the light struck areas that you see in the photo. And I'm not going to copy it. I'm just going to emulate it. I get into a copy mode, and then I don't like my paintings. They don't have the freedom that I like them to have. So we'll just emulate some of this here. Just a bit here. There we go. Just like that. That'll be kind of neat there. And then we'll get that lighter violet, the blue here. Maybe a touch of the violet into that. Too much of a touch there, Dave. Light violet, blue violet here to emulate some of the other snow here. You can use that to, up on the original there, it has quite a bit of architectural bits, and we can touch those and add those. But let's add like this slope here, which is quite nice. And then we'll add the trees and stuff in just a minute as well. But this will give us you know, some of that same type of interest here. Here we go. We're going to have back in that back mountain there, right? And let's go back to some of our darks. Now, this is where you can create some of the feel of the, see, I just used the tip and push and create some of the feeling of the trees and stuff, the tree lines that you see there. And of course, let's get this a little bit more. Blue, burnt sienna, and a little bit of the dark here. We go more towards a violet, and I'm going to add quite a bit of open medium to this, so it's not very powerful. And you can do small, so I'll show you a couple of ways. Sometimes I like to just do this, small little verticals here. And I like to change the color a bit, so, you know, maybe a touch more of burnt sienna and blue, not quite as violet, you know, a bit different, especially as you come up towards a warmer area, like right up here. You know, I might, as you head towards a warmer area, snow, I might put a little bit of that in. Now, so I like to do that. The other way to do it is with your knife, and your knife does a really great job as well, because you just do this. And I love this type because it's more casual than like a brush mark, you know, so, and you can come back, get rid of some of that burnt sienna with right here with a little more blue into it. And make sure you keep that open medium in it because that keeps some of your transparency here. So we'll take out a bit of that burnt sienna right there. But see, isn't that interesting? And so you have to do a few little taps of verticals to give it some of the vertical interest and stuff, but it's a wonderful way. You know, you can create these highs and lows. Now, this is a bit heavy. Let me show you in a minute what we do here. But it does create some of those feelings of the mountains and the trees and stuff up there. Little different than what Bill Alexander, Bob Ross, and all of the palette knife painters and stuff do. But there we go, a bit of that. But I love all of the variation that you can get. And then you can combine that with some of the motions of your brush as well to tap some of that other motion in there. You know, get that highs and lows. Then you can, well, before I do that, one of the things I like to do is come through and blur it slightly. And then I'm going to come back after I blur it. See, the blurring sets it back even more. Make sure your brush is kind of dry. It was a little wet there, so I'll just rub it and dry it off here a minute. Just blur that, just because the blurring sets it back. Sets it back into, it softens the edges and sets it back. Does that make sense? So we set it back, and then you can come back here. First, let's do some of the cool snow and set some of the snow back in, this time tapping it a little bit, right? So it's really, really fun to paint mountains like this. So follow that angle of that mountain there, see? And on the other side here, we'll take our medium white and white. Make sure you have that open medium in there, you know, to redo that light edge there. You know, some of that light feeling of that light snow here. There we go. I love when you get that. Now, you could take a smaller brush, go in there and, you know, do more like up and down verticals to get more of the trees. You can work this knife again, like here, right up after you do that, and just work the knife again and get some more of these broken marks of trees. Let's go a little heavier right here. See those broken marks of trees? You can push your brush and push those in You know, that's how much you do is all up to you. I'm going to take a little bit more of this blue and, whoops, got some dirt in there. Blue and the light. Oh, that's a pretty light violet. And paint some of that out, just like this. So I'll just see those softer edges there. You know, and I like right here, like there's just a bit like, oh, maybe I'll put a little light right there. A little different than the original mountain, but that just puts a little more light right there. And it's kind of neat how that's set up there. But you got to make sure it's soft, so you may have to just come through and break the edges a bit, right? So it stays soft. Here, let's get just a little more snow right there. A little different values here. You can pick out, like I said, you can tap in some of those darker, or if you want to put some of those trees, ideas of trees and stuff up there, you can easily do that. Just work those in. So this is a little more complicated than what I usually do on you know, some landscapes and stuff, but just to show you that you can get a lot of different looks here. And those are pretty neat little bits. So we'll pick up some of these angles, come through here. The knife to me is, like, I love the brushes and stuff, but the knife, it just makes the prettiest ones, I think. The prettiest looks up, that undulation and granulation, but you do have to soften them out a bit. So, and we'll do that. Or you can leave them a little harsh, and then what I'm going to show you in the actual atmosphere, adding the atmospherics to it. The atmospheric is going to change some of that. Let's go back now. Let's finish up some of the lights through there, some of that warm snow through here. So we'll add some of that, little bits of that going through. Some of the cool snow going up the other mountainside. Break up some of this here with a mark or two of the cooler snow. Maybe you don't see it in the reference photo, but maybe a few areas of warmer snow on there. That's all up to you. You're building a mountain, little pyramids here. And let's soften that out a bit. See, just a little bit of that cool snow. You don't want to take away all the dark. That's emulating some of your trees and stuff. But little marks of it are really nice. Here. So. And like I say, you can, if you're not sure, get a good look, get a good start going. And this is a pretty good start here. Get a pretty good start going. Break it up a bit because the trees are breaking up some of that snow. Add some of the cools, which is the other way. Here. And then we'll come back and refine it a little bit more. Make sure that you kind of smooth some of it out, blur it out just a bit, because we don't want it to overpower the painting, right? So real soft. Sometimes you can take a brush that is very dry and soft and just go over that if you blur it too much, but so you don't blur it too much. Mine had just a touch of water in it, so it blurred it quite a bit. So, but I don't mind that because I can always go back and add a little bit more. I'm liking, though, this look, the depth it's gonna come off of this here as I get down here. Now, so let's move on down. So we have that. See, that's just kind of pretty. It's going to go up against that tree. And then we can adjust it all. I'm going to show you. I might just adjust this just a bit with a bit of dark. See, you can just run that dark in there and emulate some of those trees, little tips and stuff there. It's all up to you. It's fun. You know, it's just fun. Sometimes I do a lot of verticals on a mountain. This one I'm not so sure I want to do a lot. But we'll just add a bit. You could play with that all day, but you don't need to because that's not the center of interest of this painting. Right? Well, yeah, right up through there. And then that tree is going to cover a lot of that. Now, let's move down. Keep moving down. Let's take our 3/4 inch brush here. Got that little fly right there. He wants to be in my painting. I'm going to take a little bit of our atmospheric, a little bit of the blue, the sky. We're going to come right on down here. Okay, right in through here. And paint all the way through your big tree. Okay. Paint all the way through your big tree. So there's the idea of the mountain, right? Now paint all the way through your big tree so that when we, if we have some sky holes or holes between the trees, we can see them. And then we're going to take some of this blue, burnt sienna, a little bit of the violet. We're going to thin it though. Get some of that burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of this brown too. We want it kind of bluish, but and dirty gray, but not completely solid. So we'll model it just a bit, and we're just going to softly put in. These are the foothills right through here. So get some different angles, some stuff, but soft color here. Okay. Just not a lot of detail into it, just some soft color. You can darken the value a little bit, like down in through here a bit. Paint it in the angles and stuff like that, but and here we'll just soften all that out. You don't need that much here. And maybe some of that hill poke in here. Here we go. Right on down, pulling it down here, pulling it down, down, almost to your next line of trees. But we're going to start warming some of this stuff as well. So, but this is up higher, you know, so we can see it there. So, you know, we can see a little bit of that, but I'm keeping it soft because, you know, rather than going up there and doing a lot like on the photo, you see a lot of the tree marks. I'm not sure how much we're going to do on the elk, so I'm keeping everything just a little bit softer. Edges pull interest, and so I'm keeping everything just a little bit softer right now. And so we can adjust it though later on. So a little bit of shadow in with that snow there, right there. Let's put a little bit of shadow right there. Okay. Now down through here's the trees. But before we start getting to the trees, let's take some of our browns, a little bit of our blues. We'll warm this up a bit. Add extender so it's thinner. We'll warm it coming forward just a bit. Okay, we still have to put the atmosphere on there, but we'll warm that just a bit. And let's get just a touch more of those darks right in through here. Just a bit of them. Right in here. When I tap the brush like this, just like this, what you see me do is going to emulate like little trees and stuff, highs and lows of little trees, but we want everything soft, right? Here. Make sure you get some, you hear me say in a lot of landscapes, get strong verticals and horizontals, and that's what I mean by that. You get strong verticals and horizontals in there. So you have some vertical strokes and some horizontal strokes. Right down through here is going to be into our trees. So I'll push some of that in. And then we're going to get real warm up into the front, so which is going to come back into this warm color right here. And then we're going to move the two together atmospherically. So this is the part I really like. I'm going to take some brown, some of my medium beige and yellow, my medium warm tone here, and some yellow. And I'm going to just wipe this on kind of thin here. But we want some of this to start warming up as we come forward here. Okay. And so some more yellows, a little more color, more yellows. As we start coming forward here, our real darks are going to be very, very far forward. Now, we have a line of trees, so our real darks are going to come right up in here. Now we're going to have a line of trees right in here. So let's start out with the darks, blue and burnt sienna, a little bit of green here, and the blue, a little touch of violet, just some of these beautiful greens. And I do like to add open medium for, it causes the colors to slide, but also very transparent. But let's come right in through here. There's going to be some darks through here. And I'm going to just, instead of painting the trees right away, I'm going to paint just a color. I'm going to make a band of color. Here, get some verticals in here. Here, like this, okay? Small verticals and stuff. And then we'll, and that'll come right away over to here. And we'll get some verticals and some horizontals up here. But we're going to work on the color. So if I just work on, adding the colors in here, this allows me to still paint back behind the trees if I need to get some more stuff going on. So I'm looking at just colors, light and darks, colors, and and giving some of the movement. So I'm not painting individual trees, right? So a little different than, some other artists do when they come to do this. They will start working on the trees, and I work on the color first, and then the establishing the colors, light and shadow, which is really kind of a great way to do it. Establish some different light and shadows through it, and then we can go from there. You can, like with the grasses and stuff I do, sometimes I'll take my big paper towel and pull through, and I do like that. But we'll just, and see the difference, see the values, the variations of the values here, the modeling of the color. That's what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for modeling of the colors. That's where the interest of these are going to come. Take a little bit of it down here. So we're not like done in that area. I'm going to show you, and we're going to put some atmosphere in there, but I can take some of this color, thin it out a little bit more, and add a few, like, because these are trees, right? So you'll see that color, maybe a slightly different version of that color going up into the hills. That's what you want. Does that make sense? You want a little different version of it. Now, let's come down. Let's grab some medium white, a little bit of yellow, some of our warm neutral here. And we do want to put some atmosphere into this. So a little bit of the blue. We'll come right back through here And this will be some of the grasses that are pulling right along that horizontal, and will come right through there, through that tree right there. Now, many times, the color's a little thin, so a knife will sometimes scratch it. But many times I like to do this. And what I'm looking for is, see these vertical lines, these horizontal lines through there? We call those the linear perspective lines. And they are what actually set up what we call the planes in the landscape. So we want to see some variation in those lines. Does that make sense? So, and then as they get closer, they get bigger here, but back here, they're smaller. And this is really what the knife is great for. So I can set these in, set some trees, pounce them up and down a little bit, go side to side, and this starts to build. See how it looks almost like little grasses going in and out between the trees here. And that's what I'm looking for. I'll set up some of this. And some knife artists, they do it real quick, and it just always looks great. But we can set up some, pulling some verticals here with that knife, pull down. We're going to undulate. Now see, we're not painting the trees, we're painting the colors. Does that make sense? We're painting the colors that you're going to see in here. We'll paint trees in just a bit, but we're getting these colors here a little darker, a little lighter, a little darker here. And let's take that warm color out of there for just a second. Dry that up, put a little atmosphere into that, and just pull down through that. See, just blur that just slightly. This is not the trees, this is the color of the trees in those areas, okay? And let's get just and I'm probably going to put in, as I get into the painting here, some violets back there, some of the blues, but just as kind of setting up what we call, what I call, and what it is called, the linear perspective here. So I want a little bit of light. I want it to undulate through those trees there, just like that. And that sets up the next plane there. So, and we can undulate in a little bit of the blues and stuff in there, which helps with depth because that pushes it back a bit, but you see a bit of it there, right? So can you see that? That's that undulating line, and that's the line that I'm going to want to work on. As soon as I find my right brush here, I'm going to want to take some of this dark and pull down various amounts. Sometimes you have some trees that come farther forward, some trees that go back. So you want an undulating line here, there like that, and we'll paint those trees in there. There'll be some more darks right up here, right up in here, maybe a little lighter ones right there. Okay, get some more darks, fuzz those up a bit. There we go. So now you got a line of the trees that are going to happen through there, but it's going to need some more lights. Let's just put a little bit more, just so you can see that pretty. There's some light struck areas like into these, and we want to add that. I do like adding it while some of this is wet, right in there. There. Try not to pull too long, not real big long ones, because that kind of divides your painting up in half. You don't want to pull too long. Just keep them kind of short motions. But that gets a little bit of that in there. And you can take some of that with some of your dirty color here, and you can add, like, you know, it doesn't really show it on that photo, but many times I will add some of those colors here back into like the mountains, because you'll have some of these colors like in different little lines and hills and stuff like that happening back here, little plains, you know, and so I'll add those in just a little bit, just to say I did it here. There we go. Up like that, just a bit of those. Now we'll do the trees, but that just sets up the first setting of that. But yeah, we can see that. Now you can come back if you want and, you know, add violets, add lighter yellows. Let's put just a bit of a lighter yellow back there, just right as we're coming forward here with where our elk are going to be. Those would be kind of fun. I could actually drop those trees down a bit more. I could put a second layer of them in here. I painted them just a bit high for the pattern, for the drawing that I did. Here, painted it just a bit high. I could actually put some of this on and pull down through them. Lower them down just a bit. But see these marks here? These are the the horizontal marks that actually give you the depth. So when you're back here, you want all these streaks. All these streaks, this is especially for you beginning landscape painters. Streaks back here will get smaller. Streaks up front and movement up here, and it gets smaller. Streaks up in the front get bigger and bigger. And that's what gives you the depth, and that's what we call the linear perspective of the painting here. Okay, so now let's just take some of this, some yellows, some whites, some of our medium whites. Let's just get some of this right up here, right up through our elk here. Some more color right up here. Nice warm here, a little burnt sienna into this too, because we're going to have nice warm colors. We're going to have shadows, warmth, fun stuff happening here. Right up here. So there's going to be all kinds of movement and stuff up here, but this is where that warmth is going to go. And so we're going to have this real warm, and then it's slowly going to go slowly back. We'll take just a little bit of this back through here. And just slowly work these colors together through there. And of course we'll add all kinds of other little stuff going on. So what I generally tend to do is I'll take some of this burnt sienna, some of this green here, a little bit of yellow. We won't mix it up real well, but we'll drop that right along these edges for other little other bushes and stuff right in through here. That's what these emulate. Really nice. Here. Sometimes just tap your knife. Now I'll go back and set some of that linear planes in there again. But see, that's what I start to look for. I think I'm going to drop those tree line down just a bit more. But these can emulate the little bushes and stuff. Oh boy, I really like that. I'm going to pull just a bit here. And bear with me, that's a little heavy, so I just wipe my knife, and this is what I call burnishing it in. But I want to leave these little specks of highs and lows, because that's what gives some of that interest there. Here, like that. Right? Here we go. Yeah. Now, see, you don't see that in there, but I can put atmosphere back in there. I'm going to show you how to do the atmosphere. I can put atmosphere back in there. Let's, I'm going to put in some more of these trees with the darks and drop them down closer to the front. They're just a touch high here. Some burnt sienna in here. Open medium, little extender, thin it out. I don't want these really thick, but I'm going to drop them down just a bit more. A little bit closer here, like almost like an angle for those elk right there. There we go. Yeah, that's better. Some of these a little longer, a little higher. There we go. Yeah. We'll blur that up a bit. See, that's what I look for. The highs and the lows there. Because then we'll build trees off of that later on. There we go. Want those big verticals there. Like that. And we'll blur that a bit. Little side to side, very lightly touching your brush, just blurs it up a bit. Now the photo has real light right up against the dark. And I'm just going to I'm going to create kind of like a little path back up there. So a little different. Create like a little, I always like to make what I call, and those of you that paint along with landscapes with me, you know I like my visual journeys. I like to create a little visual journey somewhere. It's just what I like to do, you know. So I always create these, you know, like I created all of this in Photoshop, but then I don't always follow it. But I have this, because it doesn't always give me a good plan of what it is I want to do. Now, I'm going to take some of this dark, and this is going to pop your eyeballs off here for a minute. I'm going to take some of this dark, and we know that dark is going to go right down in here. That's going to go right into that tree right here, see? And I'm going to do a lot of what I call positive and negative painting up in through here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some of this in right now. This lets me see the color. How much color is going to come up into the front of the painting here, right? And that's going to affect just how much I do stuff. So, yeah, here we go. Pull some of that down. We have a lot to do in there, but that's going to be great. That's going to be great in there. So up here in the front we have a shadow. And I left that, and I was like, oh, should I? But I do like it. That shadow that's up here, that's actually a shadow from another tree. And I do like that there. Now, we have to get some perspective between these and the elk, which means we're going to need some linear perspective right here to help shove them back. So we'll have some big marks here. And then they're going to go smaller and smaller and smaller, not too big. And then they'll become more and more and more what we call atmospheric as they go back. So softer and softer. So we'll have some big marks up here and then some lines, linear lines. That's how we shove stuff back. Here, the lines, right? So let's go ahead and we'll soften this for just a minute. Now some of this I'm going to open back up with, you know, what we call sky holes and stuff like that. But I want to be able to see that dark in through there. We'll fix all of that. But I want to take a smaller brush. I'm going to use a little synthetic here brush, filbert, and I'm going to maybe take a burnt sienna. It's come right here. Burnt sienna, a little bit of my yellow and burnt sienna here. And start to base in here some of the elk so I can see them here. And that's a lot of paint right there. I'm just going to wipe down for a second so I can use some more just pure burnt sienna here. And I'll use the end of my brush here and I'm just going to block. This is just called block painting here for right now. And just block them in, and then I'll paint them highs and lows and shadows and stuff like that. We'll just block them in. Try, when you're blocking in though, you try not to have too much texture in case you have to change something. Here. Try not to have too much texture. Now you don't have to do the elk. This is your call. I'm going to do them. You could put horses in there. You could put cows in there. You could just leave it. You could put a little stream coming through there. There's just a lot of stuff to. You don't have to do anything at all here. But I will give these, I'm going to give these pretty good detail because I love painting elk. And I spent 20 years of my life living pretty close to the elk, to the Roosevelt elk. They were in large herds about 20 miles away. Just love to go see them all the time, go up and see them. I'm going to take a warmer yellow tan kind of color, base in their body. Usually when I paint elk, my favorite painting color for the elk is really kind of a tan color made from burnt sienna and green. I'm going to use a little bit of this neutral, and I'm going to lighten them up a bit more, I think, then, because they're almost the color of the ground here. So very, very close. Matter of fact, if you want, which might not be a bad idea, to do them just a bit darker, and then we'll put the highlights on them so you can see them really easy here. So just a bit darker. Green and a little burnt sienna here. There we go. And this one here. So I tried to make some a little further back and some a little farther forward here. But I'll detail them all up. You see me paint a lot of elk on this channel. I love painting the elk. So, but that gives you some of that. So I will do a lot in there on those elk, okay? I will do a lot in there. But, and one of that is, you know, I like to do, like I'll show you here, this small works like this, like the knife or the brush, and this is what I call the granulated work. This is what gives a lot of interest to your landscape. See that little brushwork? When you can do little brushwork like this, see, I hold that very flat. I'm almost like grinding the ferrule, the metal part of the brush, against the surface here of the board, and that gives you that granulation and that interest, that variation and granulation. That's what really does it. And so sometimes you can do it when it's really wet, but you know, sometimes it's hard when it's wet because it keeps blending, and I wait till it dries a bit. And so I will add, And see, this is starting to tack just a little bit. And I'll start painting coming forward, thinking small, then as I get up here, I'll be thinking bigger. Does that make sense? Here. Small movements to bigger movements. Here. So little things. We've got to get some of these trees in so you can see. But little things here. I'll put in all this beautiful stuff here, and then we'll end up covering it up with the trees here. All right, let's get a little bit of that color in there. So this is where I go off of the photo. I mean, where I don't follow the photo, right? Because part of the artist's concept is you create harmony. Harmony is a relationship between your colors. You can do it with a common color, what we call a mother color. You can do it by applying a mother color through the areas. What I like to do is travel a color, which is that beige, which I used as the undertone, and I traveling that through. So even up here in these bluish mountains, you see a little bit of that beige up and through here. But even up here in those bluish mountains, you're going to pick up just a little bit of that beige. Not as much as you do up here, but you pick it up a little bit, and that's what gives you the commonality, because you see it back there. So we'll pick it up even more up through here. We'll pick up some of these colors and do some of this stuff, this movement stuff, and grasses and stuff up here, right, as we make that mid-ground and stuff there for the elk, and I'll use some shadows and stuff back up through here as well. Here. Here. Like that. To help create that depth. Here. It's a lot of fun. But I like this type of movement. This is, so many of you really want to know how to use the knife. And I use this knife when I'm doing this very flat, pushing quite hard with that knife. And this is one reason why I like that open medium in it, because the open medium, see how it slides really easy? The open medium gives you that sliding of the color here. So it gives you a bit more of the undulation, or a little bit of the differences and stuff there through that, which is what I like. So we'll pull some of this down. And you see, you pick up, when I do a big portrait and stuff, as I come down like this, I hit that light, and then I wipe my brush so I don't drag that light all the way back up into those trees again. So that's why you always see me with a paper towel wiping. I try not to carry those colors back up into the back up into the trees and stuff after I set some of that in there. Let's just take some of our burnt sienna, a little bit of blue, some extender here, and because we're going to have this big tree, it leans slightly, so I go from the wide down here, from the narrow right up through here, and then I slowly widen this out as I come down here. And we're going to specifically paint, because this trunk is going to get bigger down through here. So we're going to specifically paint this, but we'll blur some of that off. Let some of that just get like that. We'll let some heavy shadow. I like to see that because it just kind of gives you an idea. Do you do it now? Do you do it later? I like to get it on sometimes right away, especially something like this, so I can see it. We're going to have a lot of fun painting this trunk and stuff here, though. But it does help, seeing some of it, some of this tree up here a bit more. Here. Like that. There we go, some of that color. We're going to have a lot of fun painting that one. But I want to make sure I'm working on my perspective, though, still. So overall, that's not, that's good. That's back. This is not quite where I want them to get. So I've got to push them back a bit more with light and some more visually linear planes. They have to be pushed back some more. And some more planes, which we will do. Let your edges, loosen up your edges. In other words, I let them run over each other here, the edges. So the other thing to do is this tree trunk drops down here. If you lose it, sometimes you can put another tree here, or we could put, I let it run off here, but you could put another tree right in there. That would do quite a bit for you as well. That gets into that linear perspective too. What is linear perspective? This is the big old tree here, and then you're going to see a smaller version of it here and a smaller version of it there. That helps it drive back. But if you feel like you've got it too blocky, put a medium-sized tree, maybe up here, right here, and then that will make 3 areas of your trees and stuff going back, and that would look great, in the whole scheme of things here. So but I'll paint these guys up. Now we just add this stuff in here. Most of it's going to be tree, but we'll add it in here like in case we get just the colors in there, in case we get some of the tree or sky holes in there, little sky holes that will show up in between stuff. Let's get just a little darker right up here on the shadow and a little wider right up there, right up like that. That'll be good here. Some of that out in here. There we go. Let's blur off that edge here. I'm an edge painter. I don't like to leave a bead of paint. I like that granulation of that edge and stuff there. Let's take a little bit of our shadow here. These shadows, these tones, these are things that are going to help shove that back, because your darkest colors are going to come up into the front. That's what we're looking for and painting on. Okay, now the other thing that's really going to do a lot for us in shoving these out back is the grasses themselves. So we'll do tall grass here, smaller, smaller, smaller. But I still have to do a little more linear perspective here of shoving that back. Let's go back to here, rinse that brush out for a minute. So we want some of these smaller lines, slightly smaller lines here. And then up front here, we want a few bigger lines. And so you see the lines like this. So these are what we call the linear lines, right? And then they get a little closer. They get a little closer. The colors will get a little softer. They get a little closer to each other back here. Right back through here like that. And that helps shove them back a little bit more. And then, of course, the grasses will as well. But that looks pretty good here. Let's, so I was waiting for these up here to dry up just a bit. Okay. And we can take our burnt sienna green, blue, maybe a touch of violet, real soft. Now in the photo they're very warm, but we won't be quite so much here. And this is where you'll see like the shadow sides of these trees. So, and they're back up through here, so a little darker. The shadows are on a little more blue if you want it a little cooler and darker. Shadows are on the left side, but you drag a few over to the right. Here. But shadows are mostly on the left side here. And they're small. Keep them kind of small. Here. And then and if the shadow doesn't show up completely, the light will. So there's shadow and light on these. Vary the height, vary the numbers you see of each one there. So some of these over here are just going to be, they're actually going to get painted out, but I'm going to do them anyway, just in case. Some ideas of them. Right, so you'll see some movements there. There we go. And little ones. Get a little smaller and a little smaller. Back through there. And like that. On this side is the shadow side, and in the photo you see just mostly shadow. Because the sun's coming this way, it's hitting those, and these are sitting mostly in shadow. But we'll get some of this in there anyway. Sometimes I just do this real quick with my knife just to get the movement in there. That's all I'm looking for. Right? And then we'll do the lighter. You need a lighter kind of a green, but still soft. You don't want these too bright. And this is the morning sun or evening sun, so we have a little burnt sienna in it. Right? So we'll just push in. So I'm just using the edge of my number 10 here. Tap and push a little bit, but soften it out. Each one's a little different, right? Think left side, or excuse me, right side. Think right side. There, the right side. And you can come back. Let's just add a little bit through here. Just because you would expect to see some. So now you've got some of that set up. And to me, some of mine are a little bit too much like soldiers and stuff. So, you know, I usually will come in, even with some light here, and add a few like other little branches and stuff going on here, twigs, broken, dry, dead trees here, up like that. So just vertical interest. We did a whole lot of horizontal lines to make those things, so I'll add some little vertical interest. I'll take some of this light with my brush, or you could use your knife in here, and I will redefine some of the undulation here in between these trees here. So I get some more variation there. Just drag that along. And you can put in some of those shadows there. Or work the shadows. These are smaller little details that I like to add. And sometimes I will spend 20-30 minutes here working this till I get those details. I'm going to make that little path back there going back because I like those. And some of those trees here. right in there. So you see some of that starts to come forward a bit, right? I like some of that darker tree color. A bit of that here. You could use that as small verticals, like put some of that in there and just add some verticals. You could do it with the brush if you're using acrylics, like non-toxic acrylics like I'm using. You could just touch in some of your finger there. And I like that. Just add some of that interest there. There we go. Yeah. So what I'm going to do here, so there's just a lot of this, I'm going to just add some more of these shadows, undulate back and forth up in here with some of the light. I will come across and add some of the shadows here, just like that, just like with my picture. I want to paint a bit of the detail in here, and then that's going to allow me to do some more detail and stuff like that on the elk that I want to do, okay? So give me a few minutes, I'll add some of that in there, and then you can take a look at it so this video doesn't become too long. But that's what we're doing here. And if I get a lot of it here, then I could come back up here, you know, if I want to, and add a few of these little marks like this to make these look like, you know, little trees up here too, if I decide to do that. And we're still going to push a lot of this back with atmospheric color, which I'll show you, okay? So give me a few minutes, I'll put that on, we'll come back, take a look at it, okay? Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, everyone, welcome back. Well, I just added just a little bit up into there, blurred it all up. You can see this modeling of the color there. That's what I really like. But I was also waiting for that to get a few more minutes to dry up here, because I want to show you, I'm going to take my 3/4 inch brush, some extender, and our blue from our sky. Really thin, because you do this a couple times. So see, if I come right back up over that mountain, this is a glaze. This is one of the reasons why I love acrylics, because I can do this relatively quickly. So, you know, within an hour or so, or go out there and set it and use a hairdryer, dry it, I can start glazing back the atmospherics of the blue sky and stuff back into my mountains to start shoving them further back. I can use it anywhere. I could shove, like, see, I can just shove this back. I just paint the sky back into it. It softens it back and sends everything back. Now, in a lot of landscapes, you know, we usually put a little mountain mist down at the base of the mountain. So you could do that, which will help pop your trees and stuff further forward. I could use this lightly up here to soften back that the light and the shadow there on that mountain right there. We're a little heavier right here to take out just a bit of that greenish color there. See? And it just shoves it right back. You can put it up into the sky, you can put it over a cloud or so, you know, but it just shoves back anything that you think that you might get, and a little heavy. And you do this 2 or 3 times. You know, in a beautiful big landscape, I will do it several times. I can add a little bit of this. Let's go even very thin, okay? Just a whisper of this right in through here, bringing it forward so that those back trees back here get even softer yet. Do you see that? Now, when they dry, it will come up a little bit more, okay? And then you just do it again, and you do it again. So, and I'm just going to soften some of these back through here, just so we softly see it, you know, through our stuff. But, and if you take it off too much, or if you can just tap it with a paper towel, take some of that off. That color was really wet still. I took it off. So I get to put it back in there. Just like that. There, little bits I love to do that. I just love to do it because it just adds so much to the painting, right? It just adds so much to the painting. And how much you do, that's up to you, but that just sets that back. So now you can see that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, before I go do the elk, which the elk we've seen a lot, but before I do the elk, so now, we've set the very back. I could set that, if I wanted to draw the eye, the viewer's eye back. Oops, got a little bit of green in there. Rinse that out. I rinse out my brush. I put it in a little bit of extender to make sure I don't have water in that brush. Water will cause the paints to dry faster, and I don't want them to dry faster. I will add just a little bit here of light right back in there. And I like to create like those little V's. And that's where your horizon line, or right up there, the skyline is, the greatest distance in the sky. And as you get further and further back in the sky, that sky gets lighter and lighter because of the humidity and the water vapor and stuff in the sky. So we put it at just a little bit lighter there, here. And just whisper that out. That'll be nice. You could, send a little bit of that over this back mountain here to send it a little further back if you want, which is kind of neat. Lost and found edges there. A little bit here. Lost and found, little touch of light, maybe peeking through right there. But the glazing is just amazing stuff. And so, it's up to you how much you're going to do. I like that. We'll push a little bit more here and there. There, that's just real, I like that. And I like the mountains, these trees here, kind of soft. And I will just soften these a bit here. Now, okay, so I'm going to take my number 10 here, and when we go to paint a tree, I paint a tree a bunch of different ways. But the main thing is I paint the very back of the tree. You have to imagine a tree is round, right? And you're looking at it through the front. So I paint the very back of the tree, very wispy and all that stuff, transparently kind of, and soft and atmospheric. Then I come forward a little bit, a little more color. Then I put in shadows, then I put in midtones, and I put in light tones. And so, but you can go back into any order at any time. So when I paint the back of the tree, I'm going to take some pine green and some extender, a lot of extender, and some of the burnt sienna, pine green, burnt sienna, and some extender here. And I am going to actually just kind of scrub and whisper edges here onto the tree. And I'm thinking, see how now that's getting lighter. That's what I want, these whispery edges. This is the very, very back of the tree, furthest away. So you could have a little blue in this too, right? And some of this will be covered up by the front of the tree, and some of this not here. But when I'm painting a very detailed, and I've done these in the Art of Seeing class, I start out like this. When I paint a very detailed tree, I start out like this and really, really paint the back of the tree. I'm going to make sure I leave some of these sky holes and stuff in here. That's where you see the painting through the tree. And I'm thinking the back of the tree. The back of the tree here. So leave some holes there. And maybe some of this right up here. But leave some of those holes. just so you're going to see that mountain edge. You can see that in the photo. Over here, you can add, more darks and stuff over here, because this is the shadow side. But keep it transparent, soft. Sometimes I just tap it with a paper towel, because we're going to add more to this. And remember, we're going to add more layers to it. This is the very back transparent part of the tree here. And sometimes I use a bristle brush, sometimes I use just a small filbert. And I'll scratch this on and tap it around. Leave the openings and sky holes. Go right up over some of the trunk. Don't paint around it, just go up over it. Even though the trunk is going to come back in front of it, because this is the back of the tree, right? So we'll put the trunk back up in front. I'm going to go through and do that. It's going to take about 10 minutes. And then we'll come back and I'll show you the next step, okay? Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, so what I did was I finished putting that in. I started to put some of the shadows in here, which I do with a brush and mottled, what we call mottled, which means I don't overmix the colors. I want some of these shadows to be kind of a little bit of warm color come into a little cool color. So when I put out some more burnt sienna here, so what I do is I take some of the green, we'll have some of the blue. Sometimes you can have and I don't want to mix this up real well. Sometimes you can have some of the violet in there, but we might add that towards a deeper shadow. But I'll add some burnt sienna here. Let's put a little blue down here. So what's important is, you see I'm not mixing, I'm not super mixing it up here. Then I'll take my bigger brush here, probably use my 3/4 inch here. And I'll just tap in some open medium and some of this color. It'll be heavier, and you can look over there. It's heavier here to the one side. Now, I'm going to keep a paper towel in my hand to soften some of these edges a bit here as well. But I want this variation of color here that you get out here. Kind of use the photo references there, but you can also just kind of create your own way, but don't set up a pattern. That's the big thing. Now, come across the front of the tree trunk in some areas, but see the variation of the colors. That's what you want. Let's get just a bit more like burnt sienna in here. Okay. Scrub it around a bit here. Highs and lows. Don't get rid of all of your little sky holes, the open spaces of it. Get that open medium in there. Here. See some of this. See the different colors that come out of here. Think of like the low side, sometimes across it here. I use the photo for reference. I don't use it to copy. But you can get some good ideas from it here. Put that in, and then they'll become a little less over here on the light side, but you will still have some. So we'll just put some in here. So we've painted the back of the tree. We're painting the shadows of the tree. I'm going to add just a bit of extender here. When I want my shadows softer, I'll add the extender. The open medium makes them more transparent as well. The extender really makes them transparent because it's a lot thinner here. And this is what I'm looking for, some of this variation. Sometimes you get a little more burnt sienna there. Okay, variation. Variation, I used to always tell my classes, variation is the key to interest. And that's what our job is, to paint interesting things here. So you can see like that little guy that comes out there. There's a little bit of shadow out there by the tip. And so you can put that out there and just fuzz the edges there. Here, get some of that softer. You want some of that burnt sienna. That burnt sienna is so pretty inside, a pine, especially like the ponderosa pines here, the the high mountain ponderosas. You'll get some of those colors in there, and that's really pretty. So that sets that in. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to my 10 here, and I'm going to start adding. You don't see too much of it, but I want to get some of that burnt sienna and colors, especially where light is going to come up and show through. I'm just going to drag a little bit of that to the light side of the tree. We can really get a lot of interest in putting in the barks and stuff like that, but this tree is going to be mostly thick, so you won't see too much of it, but I do love to get a little bit of that in there. Oh, and I did come in and I added a few dark colors here to the elk. And see, the dark colors are what places these objects within the composition. So, like really here where we're going to we get some of this dark and some of this violet, some of this real dark that's right up here is really going to advance this area here of our composition. And so I need to see, I like to put out and see some of those darks in my mid-tone areas and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with putting those on. So, and I use it just very simplistically of painting that. I'll paint those other elk with you. But we need to see some of that dark. Now, I want some of this burnt sienna to show up in just a few areas here. A little warm, just pretty little colors here, and some of that green here, variation right now. And here on the photo there, and I can look up there, we have this kind of blue grayish lighter color, even some of our medium gray, the warm neutral background color that we have there. The bark on these are a little bit gray, so we'll put some gray in there, and I'll just tap some of that through, some of that gray color. Let's go a bit more of this. And so if you want to make a gray, you take your warm neutral background, a little more blue into this, and you'll get that lighter gray. We can then add a touch of white here. Now, many times when I paint these and I want a lot of interest, I do it with my knife. So the knife gives you the greatest kind of interest of all, and we can just pull that across a bit here and set up that look of the bark. So we can let some of that come up here. Some of this will cover up with, we'll restate some shadows and and put in some highlights. But this will work pretty well. We also want to add some branches through our tree as well. So we'll grab some of that as well. Take a look at that here. I like that roughness of that. Let's push some of that shadow into this. So I just use the flat of the knife and pull some different ways here, and I'll get that different look of the bark. See, I just love doing this. I have really in the last few years become more and more of a knife painter because I like the casualness that the knife can give it, as opposed to sometimes just strokes that the brush gives it, the marks. So, when I really want something casual, I'll get that knife out and start doing that. Let's take some of our darks here, and we'll see some of these branches come up through here, there like that. A little more burnt sienna into that, and little bits, just little marks here. You'll see some of those come up through here, just give some of the movement of that branches are in there. I know with my ponderosas that I had at our house out in Pennsylvania, which, different types of pines and stuff that we had, you didn't see the branches too much because they were so thick. But the photo reference we have here, you see some of them. So we'll make sure we add some of those through there, right? Now there's also one thing that's kind of important here is they go back. So I've painted out some of those, but we got to go back and we should put in some of our sky holes. Some of my sky's still loose there, wet. So we'll just make up a lighter blue here. You could have some of the mountain colors and stuff behind there, but let's just see about establishing a few of these, what I call the sky holes through here. And this loosens up. See, by putting that blue back up on top like that, see how it loosens up the edges? To be a beautiful landscape painter, landscapes are all about the edges, okay? What we call the edges of the painting. And we want to make sure that we have these loose edges. Let's lighten this up a bit. So we'll come up here. And so, if I feel an area there is a little bit heavy, I'll just loosen it up with some of the sky here. Sky or mountain color there we can use. See, it just gives it like it's a little bit see-through, see? And its edges, guys, try not to be heavy. We can get heavy sometimes. We'll try not to be, but sometimes that just happens. And but you come back with your sky color and loosen some of that back up. Open it up. Let the sky show up through some of your painting here. And just drag over those edges. It does what I call granulates some of those edges. Gives it more of a realistic kind of feel here. It could be a little darker and a little grayer because we have like potential ground back behind there. So as you get to some of that ground, head over to add some of your your neutral, your warm neutral background. Just add some of that in. See how that kind of loosens everything up here. That's what we want. And we'll of course the main part of the painting is coming, but this does help. Loosens up, lets that sky come through a bit. A little bit of that blue right there. And it softens out the edges of that tree, see? Okay, maybe, and you can come back and add more, like a little more shadow. But I'm envisioning this, we've painted the back of the tree, we've painted the shadows of the tree. We still now have to come forward in the tree. And I'll usually set a low light and then a highlight into the tree. So we'll look for our highlights, and I'm going to have to stop pretty quick because we're almost out of time on that film. But I'm going to take right over here, we'll take some of our greens and the yellows. Here, we'll just take some of this color here. And I'm going to mix up that medium. Boy, that's just perfect. I'm going to add some open medium to this as well. Now, again, just like our other things, I don't want to overmix this. So let's have a little burnt sienna. Let's even grab a little bit of this yellow. Don't overmix this, okay? So we're going to do a medium, lighter yellow-green that's mottled, and then we'll come in and do some other colors. Now, some lighter colors, but what is important is this doesn't go absolutely everywhere. you know, concentrate heavier. Since we concentrated heavier there, we'll concentrate rounder, more color here. And change those colors. Imagine that you're going to do this a couple more times, okay? Get a little bit of that pine green in there. Model this all up. A little bit of that green. So you're going to do this a couple times. Take some of that out. Be a little what we call scumbly with it. Light, see? We'll be a little light with it. Couple little edges here. There, like that. Okay. Start out in like an area right in here. Put some of that in. Imagine you're now painting something more close. So this is rounding. So I'm going to imagine painting something here that is more close to me. A little more green. I like the brush mix. I'm going to need to get out some more yellows here. And we'll paint some of this in there. Okay. Take your paper towel. Take it off edge. See how nice and soft and fuzzy that is? That's what we're going for. Right? And we'll push one maybe right across here. Right across the front of that. Right there. Some of it out here. Some of it touching out a little further out. Here. A little more green. So we're going to do one little layer of highlight here, and then we'll come out and do it again. Don't paint too long without changing the tone of your color. See how it's a little more burnt sienna there? So put some of that in. Come back. There's a little burnt sienna I could have right out here. All right, change some of that tone. See the burnt siennas that's in that, right? Get some back. A little more green here. There we go. Some of that out. Imagine, you know, come up over the edge of the pine tree here, and you know, over the edge of the trunk. Put some of that there. Leave some of that shadow. Leave some of it soft back there. You know, and you can. Let me show you this too. You can take. Because I'm going to remember the atmosphere. We always talk about the atmosphere, right? So one of the things I envision sometimes is the atmosphere. So I take this light blue, which is the atmosphere, and I can go over some of these back edges here, just like this, to send them further back. See? That's the atmosphere. That's atmospheric perspective. Let's send this one back. See? So once I set up some of that, I can come back, especially when I'm up there into the sky, add some of this to send some areas further back. You know, bring in some sky, but send some areas a little further back. So you're painting atmosphere, the shadows, transparency, more opaque up in the center line of the tree because it's round coming at you. Does that make sense? Okay. But I'll play these greens, and then we're going to come back with different types of highlight greens as well. So I'll tap some of these. Be very consistent. Most of it's going to stay over here. Just a little bit of it travels across over to this side. But it'll be heavier, much heavier, on the right side of the tree. That's where the light is. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to build that up. I'll change the tape. I'll build this up. Then we'll come back and we will put some more highlights in on this and take our tree to the next level. Okay, all right, see you in a minute. Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, so I changed up a few things and I got new fresh tape, and I call it tape, but we do things digitally now. But you film on these little chips, and they're only, when you're filming 4K, it only holds so much. But anyway, so I've got some of that in, and I've taken my knife and added a few little more stems. I put out some other colors here that I was running low of. And so I take some of this stuff like this on the knife, and I come through like this, and Sometimes I'll add them further out, but you'll get all these little stems, and that's what I want. Little fractured lines. I don't need perfect lines. I want them kind of fractured off here a bit, and that's where I'll put some more stuff, but I want them kind of crisscrossing and showing up in different things, just like you see in the photo there. You see just little bits of them out through some of this, and that's what we want to have. So the viewer gets the idea of, you know, some of the branches and stuff out here. Whoops, that's a little thick there. The viewer gets the idea of some of the branches and stuff through there. And I love to use the knife. I love to, and if you find that it doesn't lay off the knife, like you're scratching it and nothing happens, loosen up your color. Add more extender, not open medium, because that keeps it thick, but extender will loosen it down. And if that doesn't do it, go to water. Water causes the paint. Water does with these acrylics, causes what we call, breaks the lofting of the paint's ability to form textures and stuff, so it flows. Okay, so I want this green, so I was just adding a few other little greens in here. So I got a little heavy with some of that, so I'm just adding some greens here to break up some of those colors here. And we'll go here. Now, there's one that I did in my online classes that's called Slide Lake. And some of you that paint a lot of landscapes with me, you notice I've referenced that photo several times because I absolutely love that painting of Slide Lake. And in Slide Lake, I did a bunch of realistic pines, high mountain pines. Slide Lake is most of the landscape painters, wildlife masters and stuff, everyone paints Slide Lake at some time. And there's a whole big story behind that, but we won't go into that. But it is a beautiful, beautiful painting, to do, and you'll find lots of artists doing them. And I decided to do it that one year and just absolutely love that painting. It sits up in the gallery upstairs, and I just love it. So, but in that, I did some realistic pines. And a lot of times with the pines at the end, you would take like a bristle brush. And you can do this and try, I suggest, using a smaller little bristle. I have mine right here. Using like a smaller little bristle, you make a lighter, and don't mix it up real well, make lighter greens. Here, yellow greens. You'll use a little Hansa, a little bit of pine green, sometimes a little bit of your burnt sienna in here. You got to imagine doing it a couple of times, but I come in and I will tap and roll and create the little lights of the shimmers of the green. And I always tell myself when I'm doing this, I can do it again. So don't get too much, too heavy, because you can do it again. Does that make sense? That keeps you from getting too much, too heavy, and all the same. But on Slide Lake, one of the things I did before I put on the final little shimmers was I came through, and I'll do it here, with my knife. See how the knife is mottled green? And I came through with the knife and added the front variation of the greens here like that. And so I'll just drag it over the highlights right there like that, see? And I get this modeling of the color there, which looks very close to that. So I use the paint just a little heavier, and I kind of just drag it over the surface there a bit in some of that area, like that. And I discovered doing it like this on Slide Lake. Now, if you liquefy the paint a little bit, you get a little bit of blending and movement. So I might, like if I take some extender over here and I loosen this up over here, down here, when I push it out over here, see, it doesn't get that. It gets the colors, but the color's weaker, and it doesn't get this granulation, which helps you see the sunshine side. It smooths out a little bit, blends out a little bit, so it's softer. So I was creating a highlight side and a softer, smoother, shadowy kind of side over here, on the trees, and I really loved it. So the knife, when you're working with the knife, the consistencies that you use on the knife are really, really important. That is what gives you all of the variation and the interest to some of those. So over here on this side, I thin it out, run my knife just over it with some thin color. It smooths it out a little bit, you know, and then you could, even on that receding side, put more shadow in if you want more contrast. Once you have that in on that side, let's take a little blue, a little burnt sienna, and some pine green here. Use extender. Shadows are prettiest when they're thinnest. So I thin it way out, and I can just drag through here some more additional shadows here to really, so you can get that look of that heavy shadow side. Does that make sense? Here. After you've set up some of those other colors, you can get that real beautiful look of that heavy shadow. And the thing is with this is try not to make it all exactly the same. Try to have some of that lovely variation to it. Let's push some of this a little further back, right in there. Right out like that. That's kind of pretty in there. So what I do is, so I can restate those shadows, restate the lights. I want to bring some areas here up a little closer. I'll use the open medium with this green. I model it a bit. Let's get a bit more yellow in there. Modeled into that. And come right up into the front here. And I keep it kind of thick. And I can drag this out like this, see? And it creates those highs and lows. And see that little yellow that came off of there? There's a bit of more opaque color, heavier color. So I'll just drag it around a bit like that and create the front of the tree. So we painted the back of the tree. We painted the shadow of the tree. In between there, we put some of the trunk in. Then we paint the middle, the first lights, and then into some highlights. And then as I come into the very lights, I small down my colors, and I'll push some right up into the front of the tree here. Right up into the front of the tree. And of course, you know, on some paintings like Slide Lake, I took a long time painting those trees. And you go for variation. So I might have some, you know, try not to make them like little, you know, clumps. Try to get some nice light variations in there. Like maybe I'll have some yellow, you know, different branches go different colors, right? So sometimes they'll go a little more yellow in an area. And your job is to try to capture some of that variation, see? So I can just grab this yellow like that and push that round and through and see all that beautiful different color that goes in there. See, it's very difficult to do that with the brush. You can. It takes a long time with a little brush and you're going in there and doing it. But the knife can get you some of this variation. And you can pull it like this, see, to get some of those almost like the twig looks to it. You know, I do this with the paper towel to get the look of the, you know, the prairie grass and stuff like that. But this also works on other things. So let's get a little bit of this up here. Maybe just pull this out like this a bit. See, some of this right out over here. Maybe a little heavier right there. There. So you got a light side and a shadow side. You put a little over here, but you don't get wild and crazy here. There like that. Yeah. And a little heavier right there. Pull some out to give those fractured edges. Then we'll go maybe a bit more Hansa Yellow. We'll create some of our final lights. Hansa Yellow, Yellow Oxide. Sometimes I take it slightly to the orange side. A little white, some open medium, model this up. Don't mix it up real well. So see, on my knife, it's kind of mottled up. And that's what I'm looking for. Some of those colors there, here, these are the most forward parts. And I just lightly touch my knife over some of this to get some of those forward lights. And again, you can tap through just a bit to make them look a little bit fractured, like the pine needles, or like the pine needles on the painting here. And I'll just pull through there. So this is a really advanced tree. One that I don't, you know, there's a lot of like, I love the Western painters, and they simplify, a lot of them will simplify their trees because their trees are secondary to the story. Does that make sense? Their story is usually about a Western and stuff, and I paint my trees very simple. But today, on this one, this tree is very central to our story. Does that make sense? So it is, because it's right up here into our foreground. So we're going to paint it. See, doesn't that look nice? Look at that. Watch. Just push that around. Light pressure, thick paint. Push it around, right? So you get all that variation, and then just tap through it a little bit, which will give a slight movement to it, almost like the pine needles. Isn't that great? Put it on a little heavy right there, maybe just touch a little bit. Think the the frond is coming out a little bit here. There, like that. See? And when I was working on that Slide Lake and developing this, I just had so much fun. And so that's, you know, sometimes you're working, and, you know, I hear so many people, oh, that painting's too hard for me. I can't do that painting. Don't say that to yourself, guys. It's the difficult painting where you can't do something that's going to push you to advance your skills. And that's what happened to me on Slide Lake. Was, okay, I talked about it, I dreamed about it, I knew I wanted to paint Slide Lake, and you know, I just spent my time trying to find it. Now, I'm a little lighter here, and I'm going to leave it. It's going to dry down a bit. Okay, that's what's going to happen. It's going to dry down a bit. I can come back in, and I'm going to, in just a minute, and put a few more shadows in some of this. We'll pull some of that out, but, you know, like right in through here, I'll just grab a look there, put some of that in. Let's put just a bit, just like this. Just pull it out a bit and just soften that out. Let's push just a touch right in here. So I'll look for some of that. So now you see that shadow. Now you can restate, and I always like to do the thin. Go back to your thin, restate back in some of your shadows back in through here to add a little more interest, a little more structural interest in some of that. Very thin, very thin color. Where do you see some of these shadows tapping around here? Right like that, right? And it doesn't take that long to paint. You know, I've been painting, about 40 minutes or so on this tree. You know, you think, but this is your main subject of your painting here. And so it doesn't take that long. And I just love it. Let's just put a little shadow in there. Vary it up a bit. I love that. I just love this. It's such a great technique. And I want to practice this quite a bit more to really get more comfortable with it. I'm fairly comfortable with it, but there's some things I can't do. Like, there's some things I want to develop. Like, so watch this, okay? I take a shadow in my brush, and I pull across like this. See how it gives a direction to that pine there? See, I give a little bit of that direction there to that. And so I wanna work on that and develop that to see where I can go with that. So it gives just a little bit of direction. But I found that if I do that with the shadows through, now see, I do this on roses. And so, and I know on the roses that I can direct those petals like that. Does that make sense? This is why I say to you guys all the time, art is so related. And I know some of you say, oh, I only like to paint landscapes. But it's painting the shapes of a petal of a rose that help me see the shapes in a pine bough, right? And I mean, you don't think that, but that's true. And so I'll come back in and I'll just paint some of the shape in there, and that'll help me get some of the shape of this tree right in there like that, see? And I just love that. So, I'll pull that shadow back. See, I'll do this with shadow on roses and come back in and negative paint and do that kind of stuff. And then I always, I love the look of it and stuff. And so it's like, okay, so I know that feeling. So, okay, now I got to apply that to my tree. And can I apply that particular technique to this tree? Yeah, you certainly can. And see, it brings more volume, light and dark, and beauty here to this tree. By just grabbing that thin dark, setting this fusion down, pushing pretty hard, and pulling through it to direct some of the shape of that bough right through some of my other paint that is just started to tack up a little bit. It's not dry, but it started to tack up a bit, and I can just reset some of those shadows, some of those lights like that. And I just love how that works. And it does, it works. Tap a few little darks in here. Maybe some of that comes out a little bit more here, like that. Little edges to them, right? Little here, out like that. And I can always put my light, got a little heavy there, so we'll just put some light. And the light will go on pretty easy because it's thicker. We'll just put some light right over that. And maybe just touch into it a little bit and pull and direct that like the edge of a bough here, like that. That's pretty neat. Fun, right? It's just, yeah. And it gives you a different way. So now we have definitely, you want some of this light to creep over here a bit, soften it out. Here, you want some of it to creep over there. Look at some of the areas there. See how it creeps over there. And some of that light right up there creeps over to the other side just a bit. But you can even come up one more little light in just a few areas. This is what I call the sparks. The sparks of these lights. This is where the light is hitting, really hitting. I had that open medium, so I got this light yellow-green. Just little bits of it here, hitting some of those final little sparks of light. And I generally don't take this over to the other side, but I'll just do that. Now, that's a little heavy, but see, I don't worry about it because I can just take some of this out with a brush. And you see me do this when I started to discover this. This is where you'll see in some of the seascapes, the more modern seascapes that I've done within the last couple of years since I did Slide Lake. This is where I used when I back paint out and push the direction of a wave. So, that helped me understand the direction of a bough, a tree bough coming out, that direction of that wave and that curl. And so trying to get the light on and then direction it. And this is why I say, guys, it is so very important. If you want to be a beautiful landscape painter, you got to paint a few more things than just landscapes, because something is going to help you see it. And that's the name of the game. Can you see what it is? See, I'll see that, and I'm going to pull it this way, bring it out just a bit. Bring that pine bough out like that. See? Can you see that? Bring that out like that just a bit, and a little bit of that color. And, you know, you can make a magnificent tree this way. Follow that, just like you do the movement of a wave. And push that tree out like that, see? Let's take a bit of this yellow, some of this light, right, excuse me, the medium, and push some of that bark, lighter bark right in there, right? That lighter bark right there on that tree. Let's just hit a bit of that light right in there before it gets covered up. Right? You don't see much of that light. You see mostly dark, but I'm going to put a little light up there because this is my painting. But you see mostly dark up there, so we'll push a little dark in there. Here. Just blur that out. Here. Soften that out. Love it. A little dark right in there. A little dark right in here. Sometimes you feel like there's stuff there, but there's really nothing on your knife. There we go. Just like that. A few more little lines coming out. And I like the look of that tree. Now we could, you know, in the photo, it doesn't get any lighter. I'm actually lighter than the tree. But I like it. Now it will dry down, okay? And you can always come back, like I say, you can always come back and push in some of those shadows and stuff here to give more interest and stuff like that to the tree. But those back edges are receding. Everything there's going great, okay? So let's come back here. Now I covered up most of that beautiful mountain that's back there. And, you know, but it's covered up exactly what it should be, you know, right up to there. You can, let's see, I did that mountain earlier. I wonder if I could take some of that off. I always like to try. This is a painting. I mean, it's paint. I can fix it. Yeah, I can. I could take some of that back to bring that mountain back just a bit. There. We can thin this out just a bit there and bring some of that edge of that mountain back. Because I got a little aggressive, a little wide there. So you just use a little water and a paper towel. It's one of the things I love about acrylics. And I'll soften that one out a bit. We'll leave that little edge. There we go. Boy, you know, it's been quite a filming day because just as I was just started up there, the big blower came on and I had to go turn off. We have this air conditioning system, and then if it gets too hot, like it's really hot outside today, the big blower comes on to help cool down everything, and so the other one doesn't have to work so hard. So it came on. I forgot to turn it back down off, and so yeah, just one little disaster during the filming after another. But while that was cycling through, I put just a little bit more of this color right here to get that feeling of that other mountaintop right back up there a little bit more. I did add a couple more little highlights and stuff through, and I put some light right through there, some of that through light right through there. We can add more, but that's going to get it right there. Now, so I started in on these, on the elk, but before I get too much into the elk, I want to go through another atmospheric. And the atmospheric, this is the color I was using up there. We did this morning on the sky and stuff, so I used a little blue, a little violet, some of my whites, and I can see that color there. I'm a little bit here to the violet side. So we'll get just a little more blue in there. And I'll add some extender to this, lots of extender. Mix this up pretty well. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because it just has to get close because we're casting the bluish tint to it. So I'll thin this all out. Now, like I said before, you could do this. Matter of fact, I don't think I'll do my 10 here. I think I will rinse out and do my 3/4 inch. But you can do this multiple times. If you're unsure about it, there's other things that you've seen. And I do this in quite a few of the Westerns. But you can give a coat of sealer over it or glazing medium. It's a glazing technique, so glazing medium is very nice for it. But I use it just really thin, and you can see here, see it's very thin here. And I'm going to push back a little bit of this mountain right back through here. Just lightly go over that. You can use your big brush to soften it down. But this creates a bit of atmosphere in between your different planes, like the mountains that we have here and our trees. And I'll push some of the tops of those trees back up there. But that just creates a little bit more of the atmosphere, a little depth into that. You can use this everywhere. So we can just very lightly cast a bit of it here. I just want a bit of it. I'm going to bring some of it back out, but I always believe in putting atmosphere in because atmosphere is really neat. And you can always bring it back with more color and stuff later on. But just a bit of that atmosphere really helps you with your depth. So this might be a little dark up over here. So I just put a little thin wash. The technical term of it is a glaze, a thin glaze of that there, and that looks pretty good. Now, so I push that back, and then I like to pull it back to the front again. So I'm going to take some of this dirty green area, some medium white, and some yellow, and we'll use this just with the knife, and I'll pull some of it back up, not all of it, maybe a little bit further forward here, some of it coming more forward. And this is where I do like some touches of the vertical in there, which helps you look like grasses and stuff. But I also, you know, like what I was saying this morning is I like these little sparks. And that tree really reminded me how much I like these little sparks of color movements. And of course, you know, I have to soften them out here. Just soften them out. You can use your brush, especially if you're painting in oils. Don't touch it with your hands. These are non-toxic. These have nothing in them that is toxic. So I don't have to worry about it. But just if you're at all ever concerned, just use a brush. Right? So I'll create a little bit of that. I like those just little edges, just like you get those little edges. You got to be careful because these edges back here have to be softer because that's what's pushing it further back, if that makes sense, right? And we're going to take some of this back up here because we're going to paint it right around the elk here. Some of these highs and lows and colors here, and I will push into some of that elk. And I just lightly put in some of those darks. I want to redo some of that, but we'll do that. Some open medium, some of my beige, some of this, some of yellow. Model this up, maybe a little burnt sienna over here. So we're going to get some different colors. And what I do, you've seen me do this hundreds of times in videos. I'm going to get a clean paper towel here, and I'll put in some lights and some darks, and I'll go back and forth several times here. And this starts my grasses. And we use good linear perspective this time. Linear Linear means that right up here in the front, when I put grasses and stuff up here in the front, as I come forward here, I'm going to do little longer pulls. Okay, longer lift-offs and pulls here, so the grasses show up higher, and then they get narrower and narrower as they go back. So we'll push some of this in here. We'll just give an indication. And I got to put some darks in here too, but I do this back and forth, lights and darks, back and forth here, so multiple times. There, multiple times. Let's get some of that beautiful darks in there. Some burnt siennas, some yellows, some of my greens. So I'll model that up, and we'll run this through here. So as we come forward, we'll get a little more color, a little more yellow, a little more dark. So I'll run this through. And as I really come forward, I'll get even more and more color into it here. So we'll put some darks in, pull this through. I've tried all different kinds of brushes over the years, all of the westerns and stuff that I've painted, and just nothing beats the paper towel. I just really like the paper towel for creating movement that is not repetitive. And we'll take some light color, see, and we'll push this into some of the color, some of the top, and then as we come back here, we'll get smaller little marks here, and little marks back here. And then as we get further back, sometimes it's just a blurry line of the prairie colors here. Just like that, smaller lines, but bigger up to here. That's what's going to push them further back. So we'll do this a few times here. Sometimes in the front, I'll start to lift off. That causes it to grow up and down here. Get more of that grass look, and I repeat it. Sometimes I have to go back and reset my darks because I've taken some of them out too much. Like right there, I'll just take some burnt sienna, some green here. Get some of that open medium. Love that open medium in there. Burnt sienna, green, that's a pretty color in there. And I'll work these two together. And then back to some of the light, back and forth, until I start to get the grasses the way I like. There. So I do this, and you've seen me just, it's kind of boring just watching me do this, so I won't do too much more with you right there, but I'll get very casual as I come up around here. I'll use this medium color here. I'll break some of that shadow, dark shadow right there. Push some of this in, and then pull some of that color through here, and then we'll create some grasses. And the thing is, just do that. Just don't be perfect with it here. And then we can come back and add shadows. These grasses will be a little longer because they're going to be right up into the front. And that's what we want to put around our tree here, right? These longer grasses up by the tree. And you look at those grasses there, see? So this is a real quick way to do a great job, really, kind of emulating some of the grasses here, that you see in the painting here. We'll get some of this light. This medium white is really pretty as some of the grasses here in the front. Some of the light colored grasses, right? A little bit more, bigger here. So I'll do this, quite a bit of this, back and forth several times, getting those grasses. But so while I still have you here like this, let me just put a little bit of that in there. And that, I'm going to be very casual with painting that. Maybe a bit of our burnt siennas, a little bit of those blues. Just tap some of that in there. A bit more. That's kind of neat. Maybe a little stem or two here. Broken edge of one. Something like that. This isn't the center of interest, so I'm not going to get wild and stuff with it, but a little bit of that, a little blue, darker, just some rough edges here. That's what I like, just that rough edge. We'll get some, I'll do some more things in it, but I'll be building all of that up. You don't need to see all that. And then I'm going to come in here, and I used a very small filbert here for painting of the, and mostly extender, because I want everything kind of thin, for the painting of the elk, and they're called cows, cow elk, the females here. So I put in some of the darks, and I'm gonna, most of it's gonna be a thing of edges here, a bit of what we call the edges. So I basically just, with the painting of it here, this is very suggestive. So I just kind of tap the colors into place, you know, where they should be here. She's kind of the leader of the group here. Her ears are forward, the others are back. So she's kind of looking into the trees where they're going to go. I found this little photo on Adobe Stock. I was like, oh, that's a really neat. I need to paint them there. And I'm just thinking just how much I can make these recede here. And if they don't recede enough, you can put some of that blue over it and cast them back. But it's still going to be how much dark I put up here into the front. So I got to put some shadows and stuff. Now this right here, this line that you see on her, and I blew the photo up quite a bit so I can see them a little bit better. And I taped it right here when I did those other two. See, this is a cast shadow right here on this one from this one. So, and so I want to do a little bit more work on these. It's just a little bit of refinement work here. Got to get her chest a little wider here because she's turned this way. So her chest instead of being in line there, is turned more this way. That's not too hard. We can work. There's a small brush, and this is what I just do, what I call half-tone painting. I don't blend or anything. I just put a color on, make a color between the two, and put the next color on. That's how you paint them. But what will help with that, which you don't see too much of here because of the grass, but will help quite a bit, is when we push that shadow in here. So that shadow will come on this one, and you'll push some of that shadow right through there so the viewer sees the shadow, and they can see that shadow has come up, hit her, and casting down there. And you know, if they were up closer and a lot of other things, I would probably spend more time and stuff on it, but I want to do very impressionistic on them. So they're, you know, so they look really nice, but you know, the tree is the main part of this whole painting. So we'll come in and I'll take a little burnt sienna, a little blue. Let's just push that shadow right into that. Very simple shapes on her. She's got a little angle back here, and sketchy and just impressionistic, basically. This is the back of her rump right there. And there'll be a little bit darker right through here. And then so I mainly put it in, and then I'll go back with my smaller brush here and just start some of the colors. Yellows, medium whites, whites. And I used a lot of this warm neutral gray on them as well. They have the light rump that you see right there, the edge, because you can see it on these forward ones. You don't see it on the others. Those of you that are part of the channel membership and stuff, I'll put the reference photos for you to see everything. But I'm going to keep the painting very simplistic. So maybe some of the burnt sienna. When I make a real, like a cow elk or something like that, that is quite, I like to use the Diarylide Yellow and the burnt sienna, and then I make it more tan. So this is a beautiful color. Like if she's light struck or something like that, she gets a beautiful light right there. Right there. And this is just such a beautiful light color right in there. And so I use that, and then if I want it to go more towards, if I'm doing more of her body or something like that, that's when I touch into a little bit of green. So I'll take this, a tiny bit of green, and you'll see how that grays that up. It makes a version of this, which is really kind of nice. But I'm like just a bit more burnt sienna in that. And that keeps it. And I'll use this as the base, and then I'll add, let's just pull some of this down. I'll add some of the other coloring in here, like that. And I start to model it up. So I don't blend, I'll start doing strokes. Like there's more of a shadow stroke here down her back here. So she has that. So I'll look for where the medium strokes are, dark strokes are. We'll use that to pop those two different, softer edges too. Everything is edges. Everything in painting. See how these edges are sharper than their edges here? That brings her a little farther forward. So the question is, how sharp do I make these edges on her? And so sometimes I'll put them off like that and then blur them back off. See how that breaks that edge? That shoves her back. And so sometimes a little further than what I wanted. And I'll do it a couple times. And so sometimes when I'm working those edges back and forth like that, I'll just clean my brush there real quick, pick up, or you can do a two-brush technique. Keep one small brush loaded with some of that warm neutral background, maybe a little yellow in it, some of the grass color that you can come back and paint into that edge. And this is what a lot of wildlife artists do. So I'm going to paint her back in smaller here than what I want her to be. I'll pick back up then some of the dark here, and her front face angles just a bit, and I'll run this into that wet area there, and that puts her in as a softer line. Do you see that? So it's edges. We work edges, and sometimes we work those edges wet, so that and you cross one and then cross the other back, so those edges overlap, and you let them blur out a little bit. You don't put in a line of color. For so many years, I would be painting something and I would put in a sharp edge of color. And if you're painting a midground or receding, see, you won't see a sharp edge there. There's an edge just kind of tapping around there. And you don't see a sharp edge on her. So I come back and I soften those edges. Take a little bit of my prairie color here, soften into that, soften into her there, and that's how I paint them, back and forth like that, just like that. And then we'll put some shadows up here onto her. We'll look for those deeper shadows, which is the the blue and the burnt sienna. Those are our deeper shadows here. And yeah, and again, so I'm going to keep this a little soft. I'll slowly work her darker. This is a shadow. You know, she has that, you could, you know, basically put a line right across there. It's a cast shadow. It's this one casting just a bit onto her. And, you know, if you find those too difficult to do like that, you don't have to add those in. You know, they look just as great, just not quite that paint perfect. I'm going to take my time, though. I've decided that I like these little elk, this little bit of elk here. And I'm going to paint them up a bit more. Here, let's go. And so a light burnt sienna, sometimes I'm going to go light burnt sienna, I go burnt sienna, a little Diarylide, because it makes kind of a lighter orangey color, a little white. And this makes a beautiful elk color in the sun. And then sometimes I will add a bit of green to it to gray it down. So you get that beautiful color there into the sun. And she could have a bit of that right back here. There. And yeah, it's just very simple. It's basically what we call this block painting. I'm just making a tone, putting it on, and I'm not blending it at all. I want these tones to have kind of these colors to have their own identity. So I lift the pressure and tap a little bit when I'm coming out of an area, but I don't necessarily go in there and blend anything. That makes sense? So, and I'll go back and forth until I find the right shapes, tones, edges here. She has a little bit of light coming down there. Look at the photos. Just tap the color in. Just, it's really very simplistic here. And yeah, a little bit of that tone color in there. Here we go. And I gotta fix her just a bit more. Bit of that shadow. There we go. You gotta get that. It's just such a straight line there. There we go. That's better. That's a better. Sometimes, you know, you got to find that little head, you know, you just got to find it then. Yeah. And burnt sienna, a little yellow. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually, you know, you don't hear me say this too often. I'm going to play around with some of these a bit because I love painting wildlife, so I'm just going to do this with this little brush and just put in the little tones. Look for the tones. You go darks, you go lights. Look for those edges. Blur the edges. Paint one, we call it overlapping edges, blurry edges. Edge and edge back the other way, kind of touch along it and blur it out. Okay, so I'm going to come along and I'm going to paint these just a little bit, and we'll come in, put on some of that last little grass and take a look at the depth of what we're developing. Okay, so give me a few minutes and we'll get that. Okay, I'll be right back. Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, remember what I said earlier that it's been quite a filming day? Well, after I left, turned that off, thunderstorm came through. Then the next day too, thunderstorms and terrible weather. So it's back. It's been almost 2 days. I can't film during the thunderstorms that were out here. But anyway, so we're back, and my palette is still here. I just misted it before I covered it up. The paints are getting a little bit old, but I might have enough here to finish it all up. So we'll just continue on. I did put some of that color into here, and I think I want to lighten them just a bit. I started to get a little dark, so I lightened them a little bit, and I think I want to lighten up their rumps and stuff a little bit more. So I'm going to come in here with some medium white, a little bit of yellow, and our burnt sienna right over here. I'm going to make them, let's add a little white to that too. Kind of a real light yellow orange. And I'm going to add this to this. So I'm actually going to lighten just a little bit more than what I see on the photo. And I started to get into this trap of painting the photo rather than painting the elk for where they needed to be in the painting. Does that make sense? And so I started getting them a little dark for their position in it. Because in the photo that you see, I mean, they're a little closer than in the photo to the photographer than they actually are in the painting that I want to do here. So I had to adjust a little bit because I was getting them too light. So, you know, that's the one thing that you have to remember about it, you know, if you're combining multiple photos, is that you have to position them for where they should be in the photo. So sometimes you have to alter those colors and stuff. So let's put a little yellow into that. Maybe a touch more white. Let's go. And so this will dry down a bit more, but I'm just putting some highlights on that I think that they kind of need here. And that's a cast shadow that's there. So let's darken this other one down. I have a little wet burnt sienna there. And yeah, that's going to be fine. Let's do it. It's a little too dark. We'll go just a touch lighter here. Here, right in there. I like her. I like her head and everything there. So I like everything about her there. So we'll just put that light in. This light can come down this side of her here as well, down into her belly area there. That's good. And let's just, a little burnt sienna and blue. So I got wrapped up in painting what I was seeing in the photo, forgetting to basically place them in the painting. Does that make sense? So if you're combining multiple things, you know, you have to remember that, you know, you're painting the overall look of a painting. And I started to get them off a bit, which is not what I wanted to do. I think they look pretty much okay. There's a couple of changes I'm going to make right now into it, so we'll make the video just a few minutes longer than it needs to be here, just to correct a couple of things. A couple of things I want to do. So, but I want all these edges kind of blurry. So I take this brush of paint and I just blur those edges just a little bit. So nothing like in the photo, you'll see them super defined, but we don't want to do that because they're in the midground basically of the painting. So, and I was looking at this morning and I thought, okay, how can I force the viewer to see them more into the midground? And everything is going to be dependent upon our tree. Does that make sense? So, and I don't quite like that as far out as I reach this branch. That branch reaches right out. And I'm not caring for it too much, taking out some of that mountain. I really liked that mountain earlier in the thing when I did it. So I'm going to go back up here to my blue, a little bit of my violet, and my white here. Make a value. I'm going to add some extender here of that light blue sky. And I'm going to back out some of this. And I'll get a little lighter right here. I'm going to show you how to back out some of this. So I'm going to back out some of this tree here and reset that mountain up at the top here, right up in here. So I'll back it right back out with sky here. And it's a lot easier than you think to do something like this. That's my number 10. I'm going to go to my 3/4 inch here with this, and I'll thin this out. A little more extender, thin this out, and drag it over the sky a bit more, which will soften the effect of the sky here. There we go. And I want to make sure I get rid of some of that green there. So a little more paint right here, so I don't have it whispering through too much. See how that opens that up a bit, right? More in there. Now, let's take, I could do this with a knife. I really like the knife. I'm going to take the knife right up here, and we'll take some burnt sienna and some blue, some of the colors we used on that mountain up there. And while that sky is kind of wet here, we'll redo the point of that mountain. I just like that mountain a little bit higher up in there. Here. Right like that. So you see the point of the mountain before it goes down into that tree. That's really what I liked here. Let's take our smaller brush, fix up that edge a bit. Fix that edge up. And we'll use some of that in here for the shadow snow. Here. There we go. And I'll put in a little lighter snow, just dirty brush here. We'll put back in some lighter snow right up on there. Get that. See that point of it, that opens it up. Grabs, even though it's a point, you know, and you leave it, it might be more correct to cover it a bit. I'm just going to add a touch of that warm yellow oxide to that to warm that like I did over here. But the thing is, I liked that, even though it's like a point, maybe you shouldn't do it. I liked how it looked with that coming up on that and getting towards that peak up there. So I liked that better. Now we got a little green out here still coming through, so I'll fix that. Might have to do that again, but I'll just back that right up to here. So that's a pretty good run here, and I like that little tip, and maybe we'll grab some of this with my knife. I love painting the mountains with the knife, especially when I get that interest there like that. Here, here we go. And sometimes those little lines there, tap it around, push it. I'm pushing hard with the tip of my knife to get some of that interest in there. And let's just make sure we get a bit of that shadow side there. Just a bit to see that right there. Coming on the other side, right into that tree there. That's a little bit better. I like that. And so now to show you, I put some of these grasses in here. I told you about that. I darkened up the front here a bit just to see where the placement of those elk are. And, I may towards the end, when I get done and looking at this whole thing, lighten up those elk even more. Because if you go back to the front of the video, when I first based them in, this is my conundrum I kind of ran into. When I first based them in, I really liked them, and overall they were lighter. And then I started following this photo too closely and got them a little darker. So that's a balance that you have to look. I mean, do they look okay? And stuff, that's a judgment call. Do you make them lighter, they're darker? You could darken up into here. They set a little bit, better. I could lighten them up. Let me just show you. You could take a little yellow, a little burnt sienna. Let's go back down to and some white, or even the medium white there. Not too light. You do what we call a scumbling technique. You use this paint very dry. This is why I love acrylics, because I use this paint very dry, and I just gradually go over the edges of them. Let's put just a bit on her there. And see, it just slowly starts to lighten them up. I don't change a tremendous amount of the value, but it starts to lighten them up. And by doing this, this is called scumbling, and it's an old Dutch technique. And they would scumble in the Dutch masters. They would scumble to light values to not only position something within a composition, but to put the light and lighter values on it without getting too blended looking. So it creates a more natural look. So see, I can scumble over like in here. I can scumble over that shadow, start to lighten up the shadow. Do you see that? But still give it the feeling that it's a shadow, because it's allowing it through. The paint's very dry, and it's like you're putting on little granulation of it. So if I take this right here where the shadow is, and I scumble over that a little bit, she'll still have that cast shadow there, but she becomes a little bit lighter in the painting. So you're taking away, you still have the differences of the values, but overall she gets a little bit lighter. And is that closer to where she is or should be? So that's going to be a question of, and it's a question of balance of how much dark you have in your painting to position them in place. So we know the dark pulls forward, and then the darks get lighter as they go back. So how much dark do you have in your painting? And you're positioning these midground, very interesting elk in there, and you might have to scumble. I might have to do it again to get a final there. I don't know. I'll have to wait and sit and look back. But the other thing that I can do is I can bring out, and I just thought about this, and I was like, how do I position them a little bit more? Is I can bring out another branch, heavier branch right out here, because I have this big opening right in here. So I can take some shadow, some green, some blue, some burnt sienna here. Let's put the shadow on with the extender. Remember, shadows are thinner, right? Shadow on with the extender. But we'll push in a little bit more of this branch right out here, right? Coming out this way here. And that makes a branch coming out here would help them push back a little bit further. Let's get a little deeper color to that shadow. A little blue, a little bit of my red violet to get a deeper look to that shadow there. Some of that coming right over that tree trunk there. Okay, some of that right there. Let's push some of this right up over here. Some of this shadow coming out here, like that. That puts them, see how that starts to push them back just a bit. And we can go back, remember we put some of those light colors on there with our knife, so we can go back and do some of that with our knife and open medium here. We can get a little burnt sienna, a little green. Some of these lights, model it up a bit here. And we'll just drop some of this roughness here. And remember, what I did was I took my brush sometimes and pulled out to create that almost frond look to it that you can get on those. There. Let's push a little shadow in there. There we go. And I like that. Let's push this out a bit. There we go. That pushes them. See, it pushes them a little further back. And, in the original photo that I made, is this this one that's right here almost comes right up to her right there. And that's when I really liked it. And I got so wrapped up into painting this thing like the photo and forgot about the overall effect of the whole thing. So that's my caution to you is don't get wrapped up. And here I was. I do this all the time, and I got wrapped up into the same thing of following a photo as opposed to painting what my painting need, using the photo for a reference. And that's what I should have been doing, but I wasn't. So this will fix it up here. Take a little bit of shadow. There's a tiny little, I tell you, just, I've had flies, I've had gnats, I've had just thunderstorms, camera quitting, blowers going on. This has been an interesting filming of a painting. It's very interesting. Hopefully you made it all through. If you made it all through, leave me a comment and say, hey, we made it through, Dave. We liked it. Please do that. So, yeah, that would, I'd like to see a few of those. There we go. That's better. And maybe just a bit of that light coming, that light gray there, restate just a bit of that. So I think that's going to be okay there. But those fronds and stuff help push her back. Okay, so we got that. Now let's go in and let's put some of the final bits of the grasses and stuff in there. And I think that light on them is coming more of what I wanted. I could increase their light even just a bit more. That's right here. And let's get just a touch of that yellow. Just a bit more in a few areas there. I think just a bit there. And I don't think I need to make them any darker. I like kind of how they sit. I really love the way this one, I turned that one there. I really like that on her. I could do, maybe, let's just try, if I've done that, if I can sneak in a little more dark right there. And see if that affects her. Not too much, but that's okay. A little bit of that color there. Here, that's pretty good. So now let's come in and we'll do the final bit here of, let's take some of our yellows. We'll have some of these greens. Let's take some medium whites, some burnt siennas here. We'll add some of this open medium, kind of just dirty up our whole palette here, right? Some of this stuff. And we'll put in, just vary it like this, okay? We'll pull down. That'll put some of the low stuff. And then we'll lift up. So when I'm doing big ones, I like to pull down and lift up both when I'm doing, larger front grass. Now, I could, if you find that is a little hard, you could put on a little extender here first, and that will cause everything to slide really easy. So would extra open medium, that would cause everything to slide as well. So it's up to you. Let's take a little lower value here. Yellow and burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of our green. Let's take first a lower little value. Up here in the front, I can get lots because this is the front grass. Does that make sense? So I want to have lots of color, lots of stuff going on up here. So I'll just do some of this. Some of this I'll let kind of simulate ground and stuff in there. A little bit of ground here. A little green and burnt sienna. Get those kind of grayer tones in there. Some of that, especially along over here. Little grass and green tones here. Some of that. And some lighter tones here, right in like that. See, I pull down and I lift up. I just, when I found this type of method of doing these grasses, I just thought it was really great. And I'll change my paper towel every once in a while because it gets sometimes a little full. Let me put some light right in here. There we go. And you can also, you know, I've showed you in all of the westerns that I paint. This is for prairie grass. This is normally what I do. In some of the westerns, I will do more structure. We'll turn this and spread some the other way as well. But in some of the westerns, I'll also use some different brushes as well to create some of the grass, the opening, the grass. As you get further back, right, linear perspective, smaller little touches here. Let's add little touches back here, little bits here. Smaller, that's where a brush would come in here really nice, I think, sometimes. But I've done this so much, I just use a small little mark, and it does some great things. Let's put a little bit of light right there. That will really push her forward, right in here. And keep that kind of fuzzy there a bit. There we go. And some of this right down here as we head into some of this shadow here. We won't do as much here, but longer, because we're coming forward, we'll do longer, right? Here. Here we go. Longer little grasses here. And you can work in reverse too. So if you got a lot of that, let's grab some more burnt sienna here, maybe a touch of this dark. So you can put some of these grasses in with the dark as well, back and forth like that into this shadow here. So we'll put some of that right in there, pull that down. There we go. But also some of the, now if you want to, you know, I don't like using the liner brush as much to create grasses. I know a lot of artists do, but I love the feeling of the painting. And so I like to leave this as the feeling of a painting. And I feel, even though it's a paper towel, it leaves this natural look to it that I really like, and especially in those grasses and stuff there. Let's go a little lighter here. But that's up to you. So you could use a small brush like I've showed you. You can go back through any of the westerns, especially the ones where you see them out on the prairie. You'll see how I, how I do a lot of those grasses and stuff. And I have a lot of different techniques, and I show you a lot of different brushes and stuff. But see, I like this rough little paper towel. I even had a comment that said, what kind of paper towel are you using? This is a Kirkland Costco paper towel. And I use that, and specifically, I tried it with a brawny, you know, and it was just too soft. And this one is a little rougher, a little heavier, and I like that much better. But see, I could use a brush, after I set it up like this, I can use a brush and pull through some of these with the brush now, and get, especially up here at the front, and get some of these lights and darks. And I can, you know, lift some light touches up like this to give different looks, you know. So you can, and that's the thing, is combine different things, get some different looks here, combine some different looks. So sometimes maybe your brush, maybe do some with the palette knife. You get all of this interest, and that is what makes a beautiful painting. You get these variations. These variations make the interest, and that makes a beautiful painting. So we'll come down here. We'll take some of this, take some of that up. Get some of this shadow here, some of this light. And So longer strokes up in the front. Make sure you get those longer strokes up in the front, and then shorter strokes as you go back, and that is linear perspective. So atmospheric perspective is these colors become more of the blue as they go back, and then the linear perspective is like the grasses here, they're longer here, shorter, 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 and back here you just get a few marks. You won't see the grasses. Trees, taller here, less and less, and smaller, smaller, smaller. That's the linear perspective of it, okay? So, yeah. We'll just put in a few little light grasses here through longer touches, variations there. That's pretty good. And I think that is going to do it. I think this, I might look at this and end up, lightening up some of the elk again. But I think overall, they're sitting much better now. They've got them a little bit lighter, but you could scumble those colors over them until you get the final position. Go back to the beginning of the video, and you'll see where I put them in, and I didn't have this burnt sienna and blue quite as dark, and they set in pretty good. I think I got my darks enough here that's okay, because they're lighter than those darks there. But they are lighter, definitely lighter than what you see in the photo, and they have to be, because I have to position them within my painting. Does that make sense? So yeah, and so I have a little few edges that I might clean up on them, atomically wise. Their anatomy a little bit. She's a little portly back here, so I'll probably just take a little bit of that background color and clean it up. But you can do that. You can check all of that and do that. I do like this. That could go a little lighter now that I have all that lighter grass. I could put a little lighter color up into the front here of this guy. And let's take a paper towel, pull through some of that here. Oh, I love that. That knife. Make sure you have that open medium in there. But that knife working those colors works nice, and then just blur them slightly. That just works so nice on that. There we go. Yeah. That looks nice. And I do like cutting that back a little bit. I could cut that one back a little bit, but then sometimes it's nice not to have that perfect triangle. But you see on the photo, that one comes way out. So, sometimes we make our trees a little bit too pyramid. So here we go. Okay. So hopefully you enjoyed it. I had a great time painting with you guys. And, I think this one this one works out pretty nice. I'll probably just do a couple more little things on them, because, sometimes on those little areas you got to play a little bit. But like one of the questions that we had in school, how do you stop yourself from playing in it? Well, that's one way right there. Because it already has a great look, I think, to it. So, do I need to play with it anymore? No. And, but there are always, let me just say this as an artist, I've been an artist for over 40 years, and you will always see stuff that you can't, should I fix it? Should I don't fix it? No fix it? There will always be those areas in your painting. I just got that a little bit too much there. Just going to scumble that out. There will always be things that you think you need to fix that you really don't. And sometimes fixing it stiffens up the design a little bit more than you think. So this is why I'm going to step away from this for a little bit and look at those elk and see whether or not I need to do anything more to them. I think pretty much they're okay, and you know, but I would like to see maybe a little bit more definition, especially after I put this in there. I can do that, but we'll see. But I really like the interaction of those two. I think she's a little portly, so I might fix her, but we'll see. Anyway, thanks very much for joining me. Hope you had a good time. If you have questions or something like that, leave it back there down in the comments. I read every one of your comments. Those of you that want, come on over to our free school network, and you know, you can post paintings and talk about paintings and stuff like that over there. Alrighty, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks very much. Bye bye.